brief, so brief I will be. Before being a professor at the University of Edinburgh, Jeff is a professor at the University of St. Andrews. He's a fellow of the American Society for Arts and Science of the British Academy, of the LSA, and is simply, I must say, one of the best linguists alive. And it's very difficult to summarize all the contributions we have made in both the theoretical side and the descriptive side of linguistics. On the theoretical side, as you know, he was one of the inventors of the first phrase structure feature-based grammar, HPSG, which can be seen as a predecessor of HPSG, and on the descriptive side, he was one of the two co-editors of a four-volume handbook on Amazonian languages before being co-editor of CGPL, which is simply the Cambridge Grammar of English language, which is also the best English grammar that you may think of. And if you, whenever the question of the English language, you may look, you look at it and you find an answer for it. And it's an impossible task to list all the topics Jeff has worked on. Almost any topic you might be interested in, you look and find a paper by Jeff, and you will find not only a smart contribution, but also a witty contribution. So that's one of the unique distinguishing features of Jeff, that is, as they stating, that sense of humor. And if you haven't read them, you should. And if you have trouble convincing your friends how much fun it is to be a linguist, so you should read and have your friends read Jeff's topic and comment paper in NLLT, or his contribution to language log, or lingua franca. And I said I would be brief. Jeff was asking yesterday what grammars are, what we should put in the grammar, and what's the limit to what the grammar should comprise, and why not days of the week. And a 17th French grammarian, Bourgeois, was noticing at this time the rise of the progressive future, and he was saying, oh, actually it's nice, we should try to use it once a week, so we could call it the future for Friday. So now we've started and let the floor to Jeff to tell us what grammars are and ought to be.
Thank you. Linguistics, particularly syntax, has improved since I was born. I was born in 1945, not quite as young as I look. Hitler was preparing to commit suicide, Romania was falling under the advance of the Russian army, which had lost 20 million men, and would ultimately take over the whole of Eastern Europe, from which Romania took 45 years to escape. But one Romanian emigre in London, working at the School of Slavonic and East European Studies, completed a book called Colloquial Romanian, which I purchased in the early 1970s, because I always wanted to visit Romania, and I thought I might learn its language first. I actually didn't. And here is how Nandris's syntax chapter begins. The order of words in the sentence is determined by one rule. First things come first. You see what that is? That's an echo of Saussure's idea that syntax is just parole. You put the words in the order that seems appropriate. There are, however, grammatical laws observed generally, and I must admit that Nandris sort of grudgingly acknowledges that there's a default for SVO order in Romanian. But he goes on about clearness, euphony, and good style. And says, as a rule, what you think of first, or what you wish to emphasize, comes first. In general, it is the sense which fixes the place of the words in a sentence. The predominant idea is expressed first. There's contradictions all over the place there. Everything fighting to be first. This is a load of nonsense, of course, but it's what was generally believed about syntax in 1945. By 1965, it wasn't. By 1985, there was a lot of very serious formal syntax done. But that's how it was before. Today, post-1945, there are beautiful informal linguistic insights, great depth, I think. Things like, I just picked a few at random. Annie Zenon on binding domains, this idea that there are various phenomena that just happen in between a fronted element and the trace that depends on it. They knew nothing about that before 1945. Well, a tiny bit in German linguistics about unbounded dependencies, but not very much. The work of Mehling and Sigurjónsdóttir on the inherent syntactic ambiguity of impersonals and how the ambiguity can trigger syntactic change. It's just lovely stuff, and it doesn't depend on any formalization. The data analyses of Müller and Wechsler on whether accounts of valence should be based on lexical, phrasal, constructional concepts. Beautiful stuff, and again, you can almost imagine grammarians from the 19th century appreciating it, the little terminological help. It doesn't depend on things being formalized. Mark Steedman's remarkable prediction from combinatory categorical grammar that only 22 of the 24 logically possible orders of adjacent co-constituents within a phrase are going to be found is an extraordinary piece of work that is unusual in that it does depend on a formalization. That will be in a forthcoming paper in language. I sincerely hope. I saw him working over the positive referee cards. Hundreds of other examples to be cited of really good informal linguistic generalizations. My current favorite is from my dear friend, the late Ivan Saar. An insight on the English auxiliary system. It's actually covered in a gigantic paper that Ivan left behind unfinished. I found it in his will, or rather just as informally expressed to Penny Ecker. He left me two things: a beautiful Fender Telecaster guitar that I had played once at the farewell concert of Dead Puns in Stanford, and the files for this huge paper on the auxiliaries that he hadn't finished in 2001, but wanted me to finish. I couldn't do this, it was beyond me. I didn't understand enough about HPSG or sign-based construction grammar. It needed another 10 or 11 of us, and the paper was eventually finished. Particularly important was the contribution of Rui Chavez, who took over the manuscript. He did the work on the file. So this is coming out in the Journal of Linguistics next year as Saar, Chavez, and a bunch of about 10 other people, of which I am nearly the one next to the end and didn't do enough. But buried in the paper, and I hope not concealed, is this lovely insight, as I see it, and I'm just going to describe it in my way, that I saw we were making a mistake in classifying verbs into the auxiliaries that do special stuff and the lexical verbs which don't. That's the traditional view. It's there in the Cambridge Grammar of the English Language, which means it survived the 20th century without Rodney Huddleston seeing that it was wrong. Ivan's insight is that it is wrong. I will use a piece of terminology from the Cambridge Grammar, canonical clauses. I didn't realize it was going to be this useful. It's really just a pragmatic term used for the basic clauses that we will describe first, so that the others can be described later as departures from it. Canonical clauses are active, affirmative, non-coordinate, SVO order main clauses, that's all. But it comes up rather useful to be able to say the verbs in canonical clauses are in canonical environments, other contexts are non-canonical environments, because that turns out to be relevant to Ivan's insight. There are two constraining conditions on verbs. The condition of being required to be in a canonical environment, and the condition of being excluded from being in a canonical environment. But that leaves three logical possibilities, not two. No verb can satisfy both, but a verb can be governed by either the first or the second, or neither. So three classes. Class A, constrained by neither of these. Class B, constrained by the first one. Class C, constrained by the second one. Those are the three classes of verbs. And Class A, constrained by neither condition, is the auxiliaries. They are the promiscuous verbs that don't mind if they're in a special position, like clause initial or immediately preceding clause negating not. They don't care. Class B, constrained by the first condition, is all the lexical verbs. And Class C happens to contain only one, supported do. So, with a simple classification of it, Ivan gets away from all of this mysticism that the transformationists fell into. The worst of it being Jean-Yves Pollock's dreadful piece of meandering nonsense in a footnote in his huge and much respected paper on the split influenza. He says, I have not offered any account for the absence of non-emphatic do in modern English. I've only provided a tentative explanation for why it ceased to be required in the 16th century. Perhaps there's an avoid do principle in the grammar of modern English, falling under some version of Chomsky's avoid pronoun principle, itself conceivably the byproduct of some more general least effort principle. Who knows? What is this nonsense doing in formal in linguistic inquiry? These avoid such and such maxims. This is like going back to Grigory Nandras. You should avoid anything that isn't euphonious or that isn't appropriate to Romanian style. Absolute nonsense, but people felt that to capture this intuitive idea, the wrong intuitive idea, that supported do turns up only where it is required because the verb is a lexical one and wouldn't be allowed to be clause initial and wouldn't allow not after it. Only then you use supported do, so it's a sort of last resort. That mysticism, which mysteriously Chomsky has fallen into, he's fallen into this strange religion of believing that there are principles in grammar telling us to avoid sin. It's all gone if you take Ivan's view. Supported do is the one that's constrained to be in non-canonical environments. Most verbs are constrained to be in canonical environments. Auxiliaries don't care. Beautiful. I miss Ivan so much, and that's just one of the reasons. The canonical environments show, this is an auxiliary have on the left of the main verb, lexical have, meaning possess or own on the right. In independent clauses, in infinitivals, in gerund participials, you can get both. And in all the non-canonical environments, on the right-hand column, the lexical verb have is not allowed. Inversion, not negation, negative inflection, rebuttal, construction, Ivan's name for it. They had two done it. It's just not available with lexical verbs. And VP ellipsis. When you say they have, you mean they have done it or something like that. You can't mean they had a bicycle. The lexical verb won't do that. So the mysterious fact that the transformationists have fallen into this weird talk about avoiding things, this transderivational talk, suggests that people aren't thinking about what a grammar is. And what's the HPSG view of what a grammar is? So I took down the most recent book, next to most recent HPSG book on my shelves. My friend Bob Levine's excellent textbook published in 2017, syntactic analysis based entirely on sort of middle period HPSG concepts. And I looked at this extraordinary piece of prose. He first, quite properly, details how you represent sentences with trees. And then he says, now that doesn't tell you which are the well-formed trees. That task belongs to the grammar. He calls it the linguist's description of the set of rules, principles, and other formal devices which operate jointly to allow only certain structures to be evident. It's very long-winded, but surely grammar isn't a description of the set of rules and principles and so on. We're not trying to describe the meta-language in which we talk about this. The grammar is meant to be describing English, not the rules and principles that we use. He's at the wrong level there. But that's the minor part. He then goes on to say, we can therefore think of the grammar as a device which inspects an arbitrarily large set of candidate trees and determines whether or not any given tree in that set is legal. What's this big, arbitrarily big set of trees and this grammar crawling over it, having a look at each one? This is not what a grammar does. This sounds like a very loose description in pseudocode of a grammar testing program that's based on a tree bank. So you give it a tree bank and it runs through every tree in there to see if they pass correctly. This is just the wrong idea of what grammars are. And I think the reason is, since Bob Levine is a great syntactician, syntacticians don't actually spend much time thinking about this question, what is a grammar or what should a grammar be? And so this kind of stuff just rolled off Bob's fingers and he left it in the book because people aren't thinking about these fundamental issues very much. Well, perhaps they should, because to me, despite the fact that so many great insights in linguistics can be expressed informally, and thank goodness, nonetheless, I'm interested in formalizing grammars, and quite a bit of this talk will be about that. Vaguely implied in what Levine says is that we should think of language as a huge set of objects with tree structures. Does it really make empirical sense to say that there's a unique set of sentences that belongs to English? Or even that there's a set of sentences that are in the idiolect of a single English speaker to fix it to one person? And if the answer is yes, is it a good idea to attempt to make the grammar of English define exactly that set? I've come to think that it isn't. This is roughly what I'm saying is that languages are not objects that submit to scientific reconstruction, and they shouldn't be expected to be. They are much vaguer objects, and this sounds as if I'm not going to be in favor of formal linguistics at all, which is not true. But but a language is a sort of way of structuring expressions that can be vaguely similar to some other way of structuring expressions, in the sense that English is vaguely similar to Romanian, they're both SVO and so on. But a specific set of sentences, I don't think so, because to begin with, just to start the list of reasons why not, you don't want to have to worry about the dialect differences, or even in an idiolect, partial command most people have of dialects that are not quite their own. You don't want to have to decide for every fragmentary utterance whether it's in the set of sentences, is over there in the set of sentences or not. You don't want to have to worry about whether a person who poetically says, that was several heartbreaks ago, or he's not exactly an overachiever, but at least he's an underfailer. That sort of, it makes the native speakers laugh, non-native speakers as well. You see that that's sort of funny playing with the language. Do we want to include it in the set? You don't want to be responsible for questions like that. It will just annoy you and delay you from the task, which is describing the expressions and the patterns that make them similar within English. You don't want to have to worry about what you do for, I'll see you in the recombobulation zone. Some airports have picked up this invented word related to discombobulated, which is itself a joke coinage. Recombobulating is putting your belt back on, putting your shoes back on after you go through security. It was brand new. When I first saw it, I thought, oh, that's lovely, but it was brand new. Hence, it wasn't in my lexicon. How did I even recognize that that was English, given that it had a word not in my lexicon? A transformational generative grammar for the language would say, I shouldn't even have recognized it as linguistic material. And what about, my name is Slavy Bartfast? That's from the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. There's a name there that's never been seen before. Douglas Adams invented it. Is that in the language? Was it in the language before they first broadcast the Hitchhiker's Guide radio series? What about it went poof, or nonce interjections? Do we have to list all the ways you can cry out in pain? All of these sort of silly questions would delay the syntactician from serious work. And yet it does seem that Karl Pollard, who I think is one of the most serious thinkers who ever worked on HPSG, in around about 1999, when he was really working out how HPSG could be formalized in a coherent way using logic, he seems to be saying in this passage, a theory is true and an object just in case each of its descriptions is, and an interpretation is a model of a theory just in case the denotation of the theory relative to that interpretation is the whole universe. He's trying to make a way in which, using logical terms, you can have the grammar simultaneously tell you of each individual expression that it is well formed, and tell you that the entire set of them is a model of the entire grammar. So you can say the grammar generates a certain abstract feature structure just in case it is a model of a grammar, but at the same time he wants the entire set of abstract feature structures to be a model of a grammar. It's very clever, might even work. I think that the main job of syntacticians is the first part, to say what it is structurally that makes a particular expression an English expression in virtue of the structural properties it shares with other expressions that we recognize as English. Now, how are you going to formalize a grammar, and is it going to be generative? I'm afraid Ivan here bequeathed something else, a lot of confusion. Take, for example, the extended stress at the beginning of the Hinsberg and Saab book on interrogatives about how we really are doing generative grammar. For some reason, Ivan wanted to be thought of as doing generative grammar in the sense of his old dissertation supervisor, Noam Chomsky. And all that stuff about it being a theory of something in the mind, that was important to Ivan. He didn't want to feel that he'd strayed from it. But at the same time, HPSG was different. GPSG had been different, and HPSG was built on that. And he started referring, I think it was Ivan first, who started referring to frameworks of the right sort that didn't have transformations as constraint-based. I want to try and convince this community that the term should just be ditched. If we try to approach its meaning extensionally, we're looking at certainly arc-paired grammar, which in footnotes here and there, some and others recognized as clearly constraint-based. It's very little known, but it was